So we want to welcome our audience to a special guest, former Washington State University coach, track and field, cross country. There's quite a story behind John Chaplin. He's our guest. We decided to bring Rick Riley back because Rick was also part of the Cougar program that Chaplin was involved with many, many years. But again, there's a lot of Spokane connection here, too. We want to bring that out since our theme is Footprints in the Sand, Spokane, Washington. Boy, I think we better just get started, find out a little bit of background about John Chaplin, where he was raised and how he got involved in the sport of track and field.
Well, I was born in 1937, and that was a good year for Washington State College, too, because they broke the world's record in the mile relay with the two Orr brothers and Benke and another kid that won also his PCC 400-meter champion at the conference meet in L.A. And so I started out well, even though I didn't know I was going to get it with the place. I went to high school, and first of all, I went to grammar school called El Camino Grammar School, not far from my home. There weren't buses. It was not very far. A mile or two you had to walk, and that was no big deal in California. But I was really a bored child. I was, the whole thing bored me. So in the 6th grade, my mother decided that I needed a little help. So she put me in a Catholic school. Now, first of all, remember, I've never been baptized, so I'm technically a heathen, right? So we're standing there with the Dominican nun, my mother, and the priest, and the priest says to the sister, "You understand that young John has not been baptized." And the sister says, "Are you telling me I have to take this little heathen?" The priest didn't miss a bit of the beat. He said, "We all have our crosses to bear, sister." Now, you guys got to remember, these were Dominicans. This is the Inquisition. Anyway, I had her for the 6th grade, the 7th grade, and the 8th grade. And I ended up with straight A's because she knew what to do. She gave me really hard work. As an 8th grader, I'm doing 10th and 11th grade. She just kept putting it harder and harder and harder. And then it was interesting, So as an 8th grader, they have something called, the junior highs are all are feeder schools for the Catholic schools. And I had a scholarship to St. Francis over in South Pasadena. There was only one problem. I had no car. My mother had no car. There was no way I could get there. But they have the junior high kids run, and I win the 180-yard dash. And once again, the sister cannot understand, and the priest cannot explain to her how I could be all little Catholic since I was the heathen. They charge all the Catholic kids $2 a month, and I got charged $5, But it was a good education, and that sister belongs in heaven. If she's not there and there's no heaven, she still belongs there. And then I went to high school. My first year in high school, a 9th grader, I was 5'2", maybe 5 feet then, and I only grew 2 inches in high school until 4 years. And we dug holes in the ground for the blocks. And the city of Los Angeles has some really funny rules. 1, you can't play football and basketball. They're body contact sports. 2, you have exponents. So there's varsity, B, and C. And it's based on your age, weight, and height. Now, you can go up if you want to, but not down. So I am running the 660 and the 70-yard dash. That's what I'm doing the first year, digging holes. The next year, a guy named Arnett made some blocks that you could move. And in that case, it was much better. So I was still a C, the second year as a sophomore. But that's fall, they have something called cross country. Well, it's 1.8 miles. And the coach assumes, since they put me in the 660, I must be a distance runner. So I'm on the cross-country team. I was on it for 3 years. I was the captain of my senior year, won the league. But we're talking about 1.8 miles. That is my longest experience, and along the way it made me remember anything more than one track is not the smartest thing you've ever done, running around twice. Now, as a coach today, I'd have made my little ass run the 800 meters because that's what I should have run. The third year, a guy named Joe Barry comes. He and Estelle Johnson had won the state at Jefferson High School in Los Angeles. And there's about 60 schools in the city. Had won the state championship and the city champion. And he says to me, and I was running the 1320 and running the 100 as well. A crazy combination. And he said to me, you might consider, John, when you finish high school, to go to junior college and see what this goes, and let it go at that. The next year, we ran the relays were like for the C's were 4x1, the B's were two guys ran 220 and two guys run 110. In the Coliseum, remember, there's a 400-meter track, but there's a 600 if you take the outside lane. And the city finals, the B and C relays ran in the city finals.
In the Coliseum.
In the Coliseum, with about 60,000 people, mostly because of the high school. But that's a never ran a quarter, a relay. In my senior year, I ran the quarter. I ran 49-1, and we had 5 or 6 good quarter monitors. A kid named Ted Smith who went to USC, Doug Julian went to UCLA, Ron Bach went to Oregon State, Carl Schreiner went to Arizona State, Billy Wilson went to Texas, and I went to Washington State. He were 6 of the 9 best quarter milers in the country. But in those days, 49-1 was a good time for yards, for high school.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So, because as a C and an A, you don't run what you run. The state ran 4x2, not 4x4, but the city of Los Angeles ran 8x2.
Wow.
And the record is held by Manual Arts, 154 something, was this 21 8x8 kids running in high school.
Interesting.
In the city of Los Angeles. And then you took your team down, if you the top 3 in the city, then they would go and they would just go down to the 4 of them. At that point, I was 5 feet 2 and 100 and maybe 14, 15 pounds. But Peyton Jordan took a liking to me. He was the coach at Occidental. He offered me a partial scholarship.
Interesting you bring up Peyton Jordan's name. A lot of the people in the audience that are listening know that name because of the track invitational down at Stanford.
Yeah. Right.
He was a great runner. In fact, when he was in high school, SC, he was on the cover of Time magazine as the athlete of the year in his thing. But Peyton was a very fine gentleman, and he just kind of took a liking to me. And so then I don't know what to do. There was something called the SSA that I went to as well as running, and that was the Scholastic Sports Association. What it amounted to was the Los Angeles Examiner had 8 pages each day, Friday and Saturday on sports. Remember, he had 60 teams. Most of the kids did it and phoned in, but they had to have somebody to do it. So they had about 20 guys who came into the Examiner at night and did these sports. So we had 2 radio shows, a TV show, and this thing. As a senior, as my senior year, I did it for 2.5 years. I was the editor, and they gave me a scholarship to Pepperdine. But before you get all excited, it's not the Pepperdine you think it is. It's the old one they used to have downtown.
We're not going to the beaches in Malibu. Is that correct?
No, we're in the ghetto, which is the seminary now. Okay, this kind of stuff.
Sounds like a Chaplin story to me. Okay.
Yeah, well, and figuring back on the little heathen theme, I thought going to a Church of Christ school may not be the smartest thing I ever did in my life. So I went back and started working for the newspaper. And a couple of months later, like in the 1st of October, I think, I'm going to get drafted. I got to do something. So I go down and join the Army.
What year was this roughly?
1955, fall. I go down and join the Army. You have to understand, in my family, that on my mother's side, they come from the Chilton on the Mayflower Society. And my middle name is Prescott, and that's for Colonel Prescott and his brother James Prescott, which my line comes from, and my father, who was a radical, he was an artist and a writer and a wobbly organizer, and he was so far to the left, he put a communist on the right, for heaven's sakes.
Right.
Yeah, and he was way out there in the weeds, and so because of that, I decided, well, I'm not going to let myself get a U.S., that means drafted, or NG. I'm going to be R.A. regular Army. Like my father in World War I, for all his radical, he joined. They didn't draft him, and lots of officers and others, and from the Revolutionary War on down in the family. So I spend my 3 years in the military, and I come back. And in California, junior colleges were free, paid by oil money. You just had a $35 fee. There's only one of those left, Taft College. It is a separate one in the oil fields, but nobody else, I don't think, exists anymore. You have to pay tuition. Anyway, so I come back, and My grandmother says to me, she lives in Pasadena. Why don't you come and live with me? Well, under the Soldiers and Sailors Act, I don't have to go to one of those goddamn ridiculous schools in L.A. and because the rules are such that anything you would have had, like the job, I came back. They had to give me all the pay raises I would have had and all that stuff. I was exempt from that. So I spent the fall of '59 till this, the spring of '59 to January the next year living with my grandmother. And I turned out for track, and the coach was Mickey Anderson, and I went to see Coach Anderson. He didn't know who in the hell I was, but now I'm 5'11", and I weigh 178 pounds, okay? And I was in good shape because I got out of the Army in the fall. It was too late to go to school, so I got myself in good shape. So I turned out for the track team. And so he watches me in practice, and one day he said, I could recover quicker. And it dawned on him, and it's also dawned on me, it wasn't that I was better than those kids. It's that they were 17 and 18, and I'm 21, 22 then.
Right.
There's a lot of difference, a whole lot of difference. So I ran 9.6 and 20 and 8 in Tide Mac Robinson's past junior college.
For those that don't know, Mac Robinson, that's
Jesse,
Jesse. I mean Jackie Robinson's brother.
Right. He went to Oregon, and then I ran 47.1. I think was in the, but I ran that summer 46.8, and so that's the Striders. And then I worked in the fall. And now I don't know what to do. I go with Mike Larrabee, who was a friend of mine, and he was on the Striders, and I go over to see the coach at SC, Dean Cromwell. He just retired, but he was the emeritus coach, and he was helping the new coach, Jess Hill, who had been the football coach, who was becoming the track coach. He'd been a decathlete for her. Right. And we're talking, and all of a sudden, Mike Larrabee says to Coach Cromwell, he says, John's been in the Army, and he looks at me, and he turns, and he reaches out and puts his hands on my shoulder, and he says, Champ, I hate to tell you this, but the world's passed you by. The problem was, remember, in those days, everybody quit at 21.
Right, right.
So now I don't know what the hell to do. Peyton was at Stanford. He offered me a scholarship. He was having some trouble with kids wearing long hairs, and the university was kind of putting him on the shelf. They treated Peyton very, very badly. Stanford University, for all the garbage they spin now, it's not true, okay? He was not treated well at Stanford. Anyway, so I don't know what to do. So I'm sitting with my grandmother, and she says to me, why don't you go to Washington State? And I said, where?
This is good, guys. This is where it hits big in our state.
And so I said, and the reason that my uncle had gone to Washington State, my grandmother had married a second time, and her husband was an engineer, and the kid was engineering. They had good engineering, okay, at Washington State. So I go to the library, because I'm working for the Examiner still, and I go to the library called the Morgue, and I look up there, and this is the fall of '59. They had a really good football team. It was like 6-1 at the time, and they actually ended up getting a bid to the Cotton Bowl, except that the conference broke up, something I didn't know at the time, and the UCLA voted no, and they couldn't go. But anyway, at this point, I'm saying, what the hell? It's in the PCC, right? The Pacific Coast Conference. How bad can it be? And if my grandmother thinks it's good, so I write a letter, and I put track coach, Pullman, Washington, WSC, Pullman, Washington, and I mail my clippings in, and I send it.
That's kind of the way it was back then. A lot of people would send their clippings in.
Yeah, but you need to understand something. What I didn't understand until I came to Washington, Jack Muberry never recruited a kid out of state unless there was a contact by somebody from the kid or themselves to him. He thought it was unethical.
Might want to add in here, guys, that Jack Muberry was the Spokane. He coached at Rogers High School in Spokane. They got the Muberry relays here, so there's a tie-in here. Yeah. And go ahead, tell us about.
And Jack was that way. In fact, I'll move a little ahead and then I come back. But Jack, when I got the job when I came to Washington State, but the third night I'm up there on the phone, and Jack came up for some reason, and he says, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm recruiting." And he comes over and he takes the phone and he puts it down. He says, "We do that at the state meet." And I said, "Do what, sir?" He said, "At the state meet." I says, "Okay, coach." So next day I go down and I see the football guys, and I say, "Listen, they knew I came from junior. I know some coaches and some stuff down there. I'll be willing to help you if you let me use one of your offices to recruit in." And all those 6 years that I was Jack, every kid that I got was told, that didn't inform me that I had recruited. Anytime you're asked, you say, "Oh yeah, I talked to Coach Chaplin," and yada yada. Otherwise, I'll get fired and you will be in trouble. but Jack really did. He thought it was unethical. I mean, I love that old man. I did everything I could.
But when you came in to Washington State, who was your coach?
Jack Mowbray.
It was Jack.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Jack Mowbray was the coach.
Okay.
And he was about 53, probably about then.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so when I came there, and so when they send my stuff, they send me back. He calls 2 weeks, a week later, his coach calls and he offers me a scholarship, which consists of a job, tuition, no books, but that's okay.
Made your grandmother happy.
My grandmother was happy, yeah. And so I take my car, and there's another kid from there was going to go up there. But when he got there, his grades were something he didn't know. But anyway, he drove up with me. So we come up the grade from Lewiston. That's what I get, and I drive right through this thing, and it dawns. Oh my God! I think so. I go back and I whip into the Chevron station, which is now where the library sits, and I say to the guy, "Can you tell me where Pullman is?" He says, "You're in it." I thought, okay. So can you tell me where there's the hotel? He says, "Yeah, just right across the street, a couple blocks up, called the Hilltop." So we go up there and we get a room for the night at the Hilltop. And next day, I go over. And the kid goes with me, and I go to find Coach Mowbray, and he goes over to the missions office, and they tell me he's out in the field house. Now it's snowing. I have just left the town is the size of a nickel, of course, and there's no heat in the field house at all, and I meet Coach Mowbray.
And this is January.
January.
Oh wow, what a great time to arrive.
Well, yeah. Well, I had a lot of kids drive in January and knew what the hell they're going. Anyway, so that's how I got to Washington State.
So, okay, tell us a little bit about your athletic career there, and then what led to you becoming a coach at Washington State?
Well, first of all, you need to understand I deplore physical exercise, okay? I'm not much on it. I don't do it. But, as I told you, my father was a radical. He was blackballed in the movie industry. A year or so before he died, they made him president of United Artists, and so they could all feel better. But, I learned a skill. It was called survival in the ghetto. So it wasn't all bad. Anyway, so your question again.
Yeah, it's just you were an athlete.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah. Well, I was that. I mean, to me, it was just like in the Army. I had a chart, and I just marked off the days. And I decided, I told the coach, listen, I'll anchor both of the relays and run the 2 and the 4, or the 1 and the 2, whatever you like, because I'm older. And at first he wasn't sure, but when watching me, he dawned on him too. Same thing. I'm 24, 25, 26. These kids are young. They can't run 4 meets in a row, running 4 races. Even though Clarence Williams and the kind of guy and Glenn Wolfe and the good football player from California, another one, all ran 9.5. They just weren't. We all ran 4 guys 9.5 and still ran 40.9 on a dirt track. Because it was all dirt. I never ran on an all-weather track, and I never ran a 4x4 relay until I went to junior college, because it didn't exist in high school for me. It was 4x2 in the state, or the 4x8, 2x8 for the recent. So I ran, Jack. I got hurt indoors, and then I ran 3 years for Jack. 61, 62, 63, and I was elected team captain by the team in 60. For the 63 captain, and that was it. To me, it was, it did what I had to do to get out of college.
And then you would get into high school coaching.
I wasn't going to go, but I missed the GI Bill by a year, my group, because we were in that period off and on no matter what happened. And so we had to wait a year, 1 more year. So I called the guy at the missions office, and as Rick knows, all our officials were professors and things like that. The missions the guy over the placement bureau was one of our guys. So he fills out all the papers for me, and he sends me, first of all, to a little teeny town on the coast between Olympia and the Columbia River.
Okay, so literally on the coast.
On the coast, yeah. And I missed the job by 2 days. I'll tell you, if I hadn't, I'd still be there.
Wow.
I'd still
could be a place like El Waco or someplace like that.
I'll be in that little town right on the water. It would have been for sure. Anyway, so then they send me to Vancouver, and they want me to teach 8 hours of dumbbell English. And I'm saying, nah, not a chance. You know what, guys?
That'd be like at Fort Vancouver?
Yeah, at Fort Vancouver. I said, no. So I go back home. So then he says, there's a guy, Wapato, in the middle of the state, needs a coach, and it's a track coach, an assistant football coach, and teach world problems, be the senior class advisor. Now, and he said, you're old enough, you got the thing, I took 20 hours every semester, it wasn't very hard. And so I decided that, okay, I said, I'm supposed to meet this guy at the Edward Meany Hotel, okay? So I go to the Edward Meany Hotel, and the guy's not there. I wait 20 minutes, hell, I'm 6 years old. I go in the bar and have a drink. In comes this guy and says, is there Mr. Chaplin in here? And I looked at the bartender, I said, hold this, it won't take long, So I go in, and there's a little guy in the corner with glasses, and I figured I've already lost a job anyway. So I say to the guy, he looked at me, and we talked. I said, let me explain, if it's between him and me, I said, I'm sure he can teach world problems, but there isn't a snowball's chance in hell that he can do your track team. Some kid will pick him up and put him in a garbage can. No chance. It won't work. So I thanks me and I leave. And he must have been desperate because a month later he calls me and they offers me a job. So I go to to Wapato, and I drive in on a Saturday night, and there was drunks everywhere. And I'm thinking, well, I left East L&M back where I started. But it was a nice little town.
For those who don't know, it's in the Yakima Valley.
Yakima Valley is on the Wapato Indian Reservation.
And you had a really, really, really good 800-meter state champion named Dave Fox.
Yeah,
I can remember that.
148 kid. But so when I started, so they give me the track team now, and I'm going to stay 1 year. Then I'm going to go to law school. That was my goal, because I now have my GI Bill. For 4 years, I can go to law school. So it only takes 3 in law school, but still, I have the bill. So So the first year I go, Wapato High School had 9 through 12. So all the 8th graders coming out, and they had one kid named Odell who was pretty good looking, that little young guy athlete. He actually ran 9.6 and 49 something in high school. But he liked basketball, but that wasn't his sport. But he's good in track, and I finally got him a scholarship at Whitworth under Arnie Pallura and those guys. Anyway, so I tell every one of the 9th graders, if anybody comes out to track, you get to run 3 meets. I had to have Tuesday, Thursday, there's no rule then. Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. The record at the end of the year was 17-3.
Wow.
They had won 3 meets the prior 5 years. But I had 2 kids that ran in the 14s in the hurdles. I had a kid in United Faith that threw 20 in the javelin, jumped 6'4". I had Fox was running there like 150, 152.
Yes.
150, 1.6.
Yes.
That kind of stuff. And then there had a couple of kids at 219, two milers, 918 or whatever. We're doing.
Yeah, 918.
And a shot putter at 56 feet, and 160 in the discus. Well, the first year, I met everybody. We go to White Swan, and they got poles. And they got one of my guys, in his lane is in the pole. I said to the coach, listen, we're really good, but I don't think that kid can get over the light pole. It was a grass track, so why don't you move him over to another lane if it isn't too much trouble. So after that, I started the Wapato relays the next year, and I got beat by 1 point at Richland. They had a great measuring tape. I got the tape, they got the string on the tape, and we got beat. It was a good lesson. I learned a few good lessons. I didn't say anything. I just, okay. And then I go to meet the guy from Davis, and the coach from Davis, Len Anderson, had been a great half miler for Washington State. So the meet is tied. I'm a point ahead of this meet, the thing. And the meet's, and so they measure, and I'm going to win. Then they measure again. And finally we end up being a tie. So I say to the coach, I'm brash, and I said, if I hit you in the mouth, can you gain another point? I really don't want to accept a tie at this pace if I have to. But that didn't happen. So the third year, I got Eisenhower finally down at my place, and I beat Eisenhower. I beat everybody. We were 20-0, and we go down and we win the district over everybody at Pasco, 30-some points. And at that point, I've been in high school 3 years, and you either have to have a teaching degree, so I'm going to go to law school. That spring, I'm planning on going to law. I got accepted at Cal Berkeley, at Tulane in Virginia, and I decided I'm going to Virginia. Okay. My uncle lived back in Virginia, so I think I'll go to the University of Virginia. So I get a call from Jack Blueberry. He says, Sam Bell is leaving Oregon State and going to Cal. I said, I know, Coach. He said, there's going to be a new coach named Bernie Wagner, and he's called me and talked to Sam about somebody for graduate assistant coaches. Do you mind if you put I don't hope you don't mind I put your name in. I'm thinking, so what? I'm not going to do anything about it. Who cares? It'll be 9,000 guys. So I say, fine, Coach. Well, much to my surprise, he cuts it down to 3. You have to go see him on your own. I drive down, and I get the job.
So at Corvallis, you become...
He offers me the job, and I'm thinking, so I go back and tell my wife, listen, I can't tell Coach Newberry no, so I'll go 1 year, get a master's, fiddle around, have a good time, and then I'll go to law school, okay? So I'm there with Oregon State. And
what year was that?
That would be 66, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And before Dillinger was still just a year away.
He was at Lane Community College in 66.
Yeah, because he'd gone from the high school to the junior college.
Right.
I beat him 1 year to college to Oregon State. Okay. Washington.
It's kind of cool to see you guys that became legendary coaches. You did your stint in high school, and that's so cool. You know.
Yeah, and now you're asking a very good question compared to the rest of this stuff. Mm-hmm. That's the problem today. Kids go right from high college into coaching, as assistants in college if they can get them. There's a problem here. See, in the old days, the reason you didn't get kids coaches because once you went to high school and you spent 4 or 5 years and learned your trade and your craft, you couldn't afford to go back and take an assistant position if you had a wife and children. It was not in the cards, as you guys well know.
There was no money. You made more money teaching, actually.
That's right. It just didn't exist, so there was no feeder that way. But today, they go right from 4 years in college and they go to be systems. So they have no clue, because what they did in high school had absolutely nothing to do with what they're going to do now. The fact they were there, if they actually were, knew what's going on when they were there, which I doubt. And as seniors, they do nothing except have a party.
Yeah, they really don't know kids. I mean, and what is an 18-year-old to them? Maybe an adult, but they're not.
No.
Yeah.
And so anyway, so I say to Oregon, I got Oregon State now.
Bernie Wagner.
And so I make Bernie Wagner a press book for his, first of all, for his cross country, for the cross country team. And in that fall, they're going to go to the Rose Bowl in football, and they also had the Far West Classic. And Barrett, the AD, comes down and says to me, because he watched me watch this press book, he said, could you help me with the program for the Far West Classic? Because he knew I'd been in the newspaper business, okay? And I was actually the editor of the Evergreen in the fall, because at Washington State, in my day, you went from January to June, and you didn't go back to January again. You never do anything else. You never saw the track game again until next year. So I looked at the thing and did it over and said, okay. So I told him, I came back and I said, listen, you have Oregon and Oregon State. That's orange and green, right? Right. Why don't we simply add a red and blue the next 2 days, whoever they are? Only thing we're going to do is we're going to change the schedule, and we'll sell a hell of a lot more programs. And so I sold all the advertising, and then ended up with $1,000 for doing it, which I promptly, like an idiot, with a wife but no children, and never got it. Bought a card table for myself. Wonderful, that only lasts so long, as you well know, before the women say, "Excuse me, Charlie."
Right.
Anyway, and I have a very smart wife. Anyway, so the point is that I did that, and then I'm done. It's all over. I got a degree, and a bunch of stuff I wanted to do, and I had a good time. So
that was 1 year window.
1 year window. I did quarter, and I worked full time and did the rest in between. Okay. Once again, it wasn't difficult. So now I'm ready to go, and the AD says to me, I made $3,500, remember, in high school. Okay, $3,500.
Remember, that's not coaching; that's teaching.
That's teaching
and everything.
Yeah. That's everything. That's everything in those days, and with a 9 or 10 month contract, and you're on your own after that. Anyway, so he comes down and he says, "I'd like to hire you as my ticket manager." And I said, No.
Wow, what a promoter here.
No, I'm not going to do that. Mm-hmm. No way. He said, "What would it take to keep you?" I said, "Well, if I could be the ticket manager in the fall with football and basketball, the rest of it could be handled by somebody else after that. In the office, I'll teach them if that's the problem. And I knew nothing about being ticket measure. How difficult can it be, for Christ's sake? So he said, I'll do better than that. I'll make you the assistant track coach, and I'll give you a country club membership and a car besides.
Wow. Okay.
And he's giving me $7,000. I've just doubled my salary. And we don't have any children yet. I said, well, we'll stay one more year. What the hell? God's been good to
So
me.
staying at Oregon State another year.
Yeah, stay another. Well, I said, I'll stay. I said, one thing, I'll either stay the year minimum, and the only way I'd ever leave, even at this point, if you really need me another year, I will agree to something, 6 months to 24, or whatever the case is, except if Washington State should call me. But they're not going to, so there's no chance. That fall, Jack, after the cross-country season's over, we went 67, in the fall. I mean, ran the spring, the season is 67, and then...
And Rick was already at Washington State.
Yeah, he was already at Washington. And so then Mulberry's daughter and her husband live down there in Albany, which is not very far from Corvallis. So he's down seeing his grandchildren, and he calls me up and says, he'd like to see me at the Copper Kettle, which is a little restaurant downtown in Corvallis. I figured, he said, I get to have assistants. So I assume he wants me to give him some names for some assistants. So I come to the meeting, and we sit and talk, and nice. He said, Stan Bates finally gave me a assistant. I didn't find out it except till a local poker game. He said, well, the guys in the town, the bankers all knew, but I didn't. He said, I said, well, I've got something. He said, no. He said, hear me out. He said, I told Stan Bates I only one guy I want is John Chaplin. And I don't know what to do. I'm silent for about 35 seconds, And I say, oh, my God, to myself. I said, I got to talk to my wife, So I go home and that afternoon, and I talk to her. And she's at the sink, and she's doing her thing, and she turns and she says, why don't you just give the damn thing up? You're going to be a track coach. So I had one more meet with Oregon State, and I have Willie Turner, and
Willie Turner out of Yakima Davis.
And they have Larry Shire out of
Newport Bellevue.
Right.
Yeah.
And they're both going to run the 60. Well, at Portland, you may have been in the meet.
I was in that meet. Yeah.
Anyway, Willie Turner beats Shire. Okay? Next week, I got my Cougar Blazer on up in Seattle. I'll be damned. Shire beats Willie Turner. The kids come over to me, and kids are funny, and they say, we never thought there was much about this coaching stuff, Ki coach, but we figured there must be, because when he was there, you won, and when he was here, I won. And the kids laughed about it. And of course, there's no such thing as that, Coaching is about, at college level, is 70% recruiting, 25% taking care of the children.
No doubt.
And then you can break your arm for 5% for coaching.
What do you think Jack Mulberry saw in you to give you that position?
Well, basically because I was always, we didn't have any money and stuff, and I called up I'm older, remember, so I don't like a kid. And so I call up and I ran 4 events and did it every week and did my job, and helped with the younger kids. Montana State had an indoor meet, and I got us to take 7 guys, Coach and I, all over, and one of the fraternities, the SIG Up fraternity, was what I've been a SIG Up, and they let us stay in. We went over there for 2 years and ran it in the meet. So we got another meet for the kids indoors, as many events. So I think it was probably things, and then of course I go to Oregon State, and I got Willie Turner, and I got a handful of good kids. So he knows I can recruit.
You can recruit. You're a promoter.
Yeah. I can sell ice cubes to Eskimos, right?
Yeah. This is your. This is going to be your career. You're at Washington State. How many years?
I was at Washington State from. I came and the jobs I got. He made me the cross country coach so he could tell Stan to pay me more money.
So
remember,
this was one of your athletes. Rick Riley's one of your athletes.
I really did. There is no such thing as a cross country coach. It's a track coach in those days. So he did. So Jack gives me that, and he said, we'll go together. The first year. And after that, as Rick knows, I took the team to the nationals. I did all that kind of stuff. Jack, he was there the first year. Just being around. He gave me the throwers, the 4 throws, the intermediate hurdles, and the distance runners. Okay, and what I learned from Jack, it was how to handle kids. What I learned from Lindgren was too damn many miles is a stupid idea.
Good to know.
Quality versus
Good
quantity.
to know that. Okay.
Quality versus quantity. After the second year, I told Jack we ran rally in the 10 because remember high school he was ranked in the top eighth in the nation in the 10,000 as a high school student. Was it fourth?
Fourth.
Whatever. Excuse me. I apologize.
No, that's okay.
You were All-American.
No. But it's a big deal to be in the United States. Mm-hmm. So I didn't think much about it when he ran the 10. But Riley runs up on his toes, and I'm thinking to myself, this is not the smartest thing God ever did.
25 laps around the track.
So I say to Jack the following year, we got to get Riley out from Lingman's schedule. The only answer open is the damn mile. There ain't any other answer open. So I said, let's run him in the mile. He wins the conference. He beats Devine and McDonald, all three of them.
McDonald from Stanford and Devine from Oregon.
All three of them break the record. He wins the thing, okay? I wanted
the Spokane kid, but we had in our last podcast, won this thing, okay?
First 4-minute miler for Washington State. I then said to Jack, we need to run him in the 3,000. And Jack said, but he got second. Coach, I said, no. I said, I think he's got it. I said, we got an outside shot to get second or third in this damn meet, and if somebody stumbles, but running the 10,000 in this heat is a gamble. He got away with it once, but he was running distances then. He's been not running distances. He's been running the mile, But I wasn't a head coach, and I have to go by what Jack wanted, and afterwards when he asked me, I love the old man. The only thing I can say is, hell, anybody could have said that, and I just took it out of my head. I did not push the issue.
Yeah, out of respect.
But I did say to him, you ought to run the 3,000 in the damn AAU meet. Mm-hmm. And he did, and he beat Pre there.
What was it like being around Jerry Lindgren?
Oh, Lindgren was fun if you and because I had Van Reenen and Lindgren was like, one giant and one short one, right? Mm-hmm. And they both were very good and then a third kid, of course. No, being around Jerry, everybody in the world has a defense mechanisms. Jerry was to chatter, and push you away. That's how he did it. Mm-hmm. But everybody has one. Anybody that says he doesn't have one is either stupid or lying to you, okay? Because you all have one mechanism. It's like the old adage, your greatest asset is your greatest liability. For years, I tried to explain that to kids. You don't seem to understand that. You think it's just one way. It's not.
Well, then it wasn't long after that we have this big connection from Kenya. Well, so many great world-class Olympic champion kind of guys.
That's simple. I am sitting in my office in the summer playing with my paper airplanes or whatever coaches do in the summer when they got nothing better to do. And in walks this great, big, tall black guy with another kid who was a graduate student. And he introduced himself, and this is Dr. Jonathan Neno. He was a professor over at UPS or Pacific Lutheran. He tells me he has a friend named John Neno who runs 1335 for 5,000, and he has a friend and a brother who runs 1 or 2 for the hurdles. And I'm thinking, also by John Neno, and I'm thinking the same thing that California, Washington, Michigan, and 5 other schools he told to it, and they thought what I thought. Sure, and I'm the good fairy. After he left, I remember that Mel Whitfield, I had done some stuff with Mel Whitfield. I had helped him. He went from Kenya to Ethiopia back and forth for the State Department. And he had a couple of kids he wanted to send to a college. And we had a big alumni down in Walla Walla. And I went down to see him. And he agreed to put up the money for the room and board if the president would give him a waiver. And they both went there. So I don't call him, I sent him a telegram.
Wow.
A week later, I get back from the telegram. He says, I'll go down and check. Another 3-4 weeks, he goes down and he checks, and he says he's telling you the truth. So I tell Dr. Nano, look, your brother, your mother, your cousin, I don't care. I can't do anything about it. I'm going to send them a letter of intent. They show up at my door. It's wonderful. They got it. So
John Neno was the first.
John Neno and Kip Neno. They're both named John Neno. I told one you're John, one you're Kip. That's it. I changed your name.
So blame it on this professor from the University of Puget Sound that came in.
Yeah. Later he became the Speaker of the House in Kenya, and he was
really?
He was the chief advisor to Daniel Moya. That's why I could get anybody I wanted. Anyway,
Okay.
Anyway, so what happens then is that here they come, and they got big lapels, and they're standing there like that. And he says, "Now I want you two young men to understand something. When the bonus says jump, you jump. When the bonus says run, you run." And I'm thinking, "Oh my God, if they hear this outside this room, I'm a dead man."
Yes.
Anyway, so the kids come. John Reynolds, a freshman, he does fine. I don't let him too hard. And the hurdler is a different story. I let John Nettle run. He wanted to run against Pre. Should have run a 10, but I let him out. I let him run against Pre's. Freshman doesn't matter. And the two guys from Colorado caught him in the last couple of steps, and he got fourth.
Ted Castaneda and...
but he ran through something like 3:10,
Oh, yeah, they were
10.
all under 13:10, real close.
Yeah, and then that's not bad for, freshmen.
Yeah.
Anyway,
John Sinclair.
That's right.
and those are those two guys, yeah. So anyway, and then Dean Clark had got third in the steeple.
Oregonian.
Yeah, got third in the steeple. One of those 919s, 417 kids that came in.
You got things rolling, man, on the national scene now. You're now a powerhouse.
Well, not yet. And but I'm still a small fish today, like I was then in a small pound. Anyway, so what happens at this point is that the hurdler, I'm watching the hurdler, and there's something wrong with his step. I get my Super 8, I take a shot, it comes back, oh my God, he just changed feet. I asked him, how many times has he been in starting block? He said 2. I flipped his box around, and before I was older, in 13.5 was an All-American.
Wow.
All I did was flip his feet. Because I knew there was something wrong to the first hurdle. Well, after the next year, I meet Ben Jipko, and he tells me about this kid, Joshua Kimato. And then I meet another guy, and then
wow.
Kenchodi Kano, because in fact I took Kenchodi Kano's oldest son, was not a runner. And there was some missionaries there who were going to come back, and I had him as a manager for 2 years, and then he went there and he got a PhD, but he was not a runner, that kid. And so one after one, I got these guys, Ben Jipko says to me, there's a kid named Samson Kiwamba. He runs 30 minutes flat. I said, that's not very fast. Yeah, but he does it at 8,000 feet, coach.
I might add, guys, that what would he end up doing? Was he a gold medal winner in the Olympic Games?
Yeah, right, Pat.
Yeah, a world record holder.
So I'm listening to him. I figure, what the hell? He doesn't know as much as I do about this deal. And the last couple of guys told me stuff worked out pretty good. Mm-hmm. So I take him, and 2 years later, of course, he does break the world's record. Now I tell all the kids that if you do well and you had a good meet and you're in Europe, you have to call me. Now the Kenya kids are going to do this. They're not going to spend any money to call me in the middle of the day. They call me at 2 a.m. where they know they're going to get me in bed.
Right.
So he calls me, and I got the phone to Sampson. I said, how do you do? He said he won. I said, well, that's good. The meet director will let me bring guys again next year. Before I hang up, I said, oh, by the way, how fast did you run? And he says, 27, 31, 47. I said, you broke Bedford's record. Yeah, Coach, you told me you had that sign on the board. If you can't break 8, 12 or 27, you shouldn't tell me how great you are.
Yeah.
And you just broke the world's record.
Where did Henry Aronoff flow into this?
Oh, when John Neno left remember John Neno won all 3 times he ran the indoor 3 mile. All 3 times he ran the 6 mile. He won 1.5. He had another that in my system, because I had, as Riley tells you, I had a primary secondary system.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I tell you, 600 meters to go, if everybody's run, you're on your own. But otherwise, you follow it, okay? He was at the games as their third steeplechaser, and they called me up and said, you want this kid? He runs about 8:35 or 8:36. I said, sure.
For steeple?
Yeah. Oh. And so I said, sure. And so that's how he came. Now, people forget that when Sampson ran 27:31, Rono had run 27:37 as a freshman. He ran 8:29 that year, and he ran 13:29. See, he was just overshadowed, except for the 10. That 10 was one run good 10.
Yes.
But the rest was not,
What was it like coaching Henry?
Easy.
What was he like?
No, just like him. Henry Rono. So I come back, and there's Samson. They're running in the canyon. He's making Samson look like a 3-year-old. I bring the kid in my office, and I say to him, son, you could be the first guy in the world to break all these records. They're all slow. They're all weak. The world is going to, in the next decade, is going to blow these things out of the water. He says, you really think so, Coach? I said, oh, yeah. I sucked myself up and lied like any coach. Of course you can do it.
Yes.
And then I said, we have to have a plan. And the plan was run the race, then correct the thing, then run for the record. We opened up. The first time we opened up Spokane, we were in 13:22 out here in the snow against Oregon State in the dual meet.
So let's put this down. 13:22 in Spokane.
In the snow.
So that would definitely be the fastest performance on Spokane soil
Oh, easily. Yeah.
to this day, by the way.
Sure.
So then, I take him down to the British Jenner and I make him run the second mile in 4:02. Then we're going to go. We need to run the steeple. Well, I could have run at Oregon. Okay, I could have run at Oregon. I didn't run in Oregon, not because I don't like Oregon, not just like the other story they had me. Chaplin killed a duck and threw it in the water jump pit. No, I do not. I was in a fit of Pete. I said one time, if I had any cojones, I would, but I didn't do it.
Right.
Little ladies still stop me in the street in Eugene and ask
Yes,
me,
they
"Are you
do.
sorry for killing the duck?"
You're still
the duck killer.
Yeah, you're
The duck
on
killer.
on the wanted list in Eugene,
Yeah,
Oregon.
That's right. So the point is, the simplest steeplechase pit was not deep enough. It was not legal. Bernie Wagner had measured it. I talked him out of saying it in the press for you out of your
So
mind.
the Hayward Field steeplechase pit was illegal.
Yes, it was just. It was just little. Didn't.
Okay, but
It
still.
doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It only matters when the guy with the IFF comes and makes a world record. So I say to Henry, we can't do it here. I'd like to do it here because we get good competition. It's a fast track. There's a good fan, but we can't do it here because if we do it, here's what's going to happen. They're going to come and measure, and then the headline in the Eugene Register Guard is going to be Chaplin embarrasses Oregon. He knew it ahead of time. I can write it myself, for heaven's sake. So he's running along, and the Anders of Sweden was a record like 08 something, and lap and a half to go. I'll be damned. He was on it. And I said, "Slow down," and he slows down and he runs 8:14.
Not a world record, but maybe 2 or 3 all-time ever.
Yeah, and along here comes the press, and this is why at this point this is when I made the dumb statement, and I'll finish why. And Carl Cluffs, with the press there, says to the kid, and he turns to me and says, "Kid, the kid read or write?" First I said no comment, and then I said, "You guys in the press are a bunch of what? You don't deserve a goddamn world record, you Oregon fans." But I said, the fans are shitty only. I said shitty fans are only in the duel meet. They're over enthusiastic. But if you come here any other time, they're not. But I stand by the press, you're shitty. And then they don't quit when I'm already in over my head. I say we're going to break it in Seattle in the Northwest relays.
And everybody goes to Seattle to break world records,
Yeah,
right?
right, yeah,
In front of 200 people in Husky Stadium.
Yeah,
Okay.
but it gets better. As I walk off the field, I'm thinking to myself, "John, make a mental note never to say something like that again." So we go there, and of course, he breaks it.
Unbelievable. I mean, was it 8:03?
8:05 something.
Yeah, 8:05, steeplechase, Seattle Wash, Husky Stadium, 200 folks.
Well, but at Cal Berkeley, there may be 1,000, 1,500 watch him run Cal when he ran 13:08.
And that was a couple weeks later?
No, that was the first one.
Okay, 13:08 in Cal.
Yeah. I was standing when he went by at 12:39 at 3 miles. I knew the world record was crashed.
And let's get something straight. No rabbits.
No. That's not true. But they finished. I had 3 guys. We had a dual meet with Arizona State and Cal. Okay, that was the first one. We went from Oregon. We went. Remember, I told you we ran at Spokane in the 5, and then we went to them. And the third one was at Cal Berkeley. That's time to break it. That on our system, 3 times. And so I told Samson and Joshua and Bean, "You guys got to sweep the guys in the Cal in the 5,000. Just pull Bean along. I mean, in the 1,500. And then what's going to happen?" I said, "Joshua, you're going to take the first 1,000. Samson going to take the second 1,000. And by that time, if you look at the track, all these guys from Oregon, Arizona State are spread around. The kid will just run them down." And that's what he did, and ran 13:08.
Now we don't have a lot of time left, but let's roll into you were a named Olympic coach. What Olympics? And tell us a little bit about that experience.
What happened? I was appointed the head of ICC International Competition, and I said to myself, "I don't want to be like these guys in the AAU. I'm the head guy. I elect myself and elect them." So I made myself ineligible, and I served for 12 years. 3 different presidents appointed me. So I figured I'm out of the loop. And the only reason I even was eligible is that I one time, after some guy goes to go to Brazil and the World Just Student Games, and he couldn't go, and they asked me to do it at the last minute, and that made me eligible. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been eligible. So I came to that meeting as the ex-officio member, and they had a vote, and I got 31 of the 39 votes. Not because they liked me. A, Holland Castle had just been outed by Pat Rico. B, they had no money, so they sent Chaplin over there to Australia to figure it out. And I made a deal with Ron Clark, and that was it. That's how I became the Olympic coach. You know?
And was that a great experience? I mean, Bill Bowerman was the Olympic coach during my era, and of course, that was Munich, and there was a lot of drama, and he said it was the worst experience of his life.
No. My point was, I'm a very good delegator. I'm a lot of things, but insecure is not one of them. Okay?
No, you're not insecure. Audience out there, John Chaplin is not insecure.
Anyway, so the point is that I had a 2-man staff, Rick Stone, and the program without Rick Sloan would not have been as good as the program with Rick Sloan, because Rick had one set of ideas and I had another set of ideas, and that way neither one of us bought the Kool-Aid. In between. He handled the field, I handled the running.
And this at Washington State, of course.
Yes. And I like the field better than the running in many cases, but as a head coach, you have to leave the field. You cannot leave a pole vault or javelin thrower. And Rick...
So delegating.
Yeah, Rick, I recruited more than 90% of them, but I gave them to him. They were his thing. Let the guy do the job. Okay, without him, and he did a very good job. And he became the coach after me, and his record stands what it is, and you can look that up. But no, he was, but again, once again, you have a relationship problem. If you give somebody that much authority, you can't necessarily hold their hand all the time, because this is not going to go well. So I always kept the distance. Just because this is yours, you run it, you got it. Right. You know what I'm saying? Because if somebody had to say no, it's only one guy got to have to say it. It's me. Yeah. Today they have bigger staffs so that you can manage.
Spokane just built a podium.
Oh, it's great.
What's your take on it?
There's nothing like it west of the Mississippi.
How did we get the USA Championships? Did you have anything to do with that? That's pretty amazing.
Oh well, the USA Champions will take care of itself.
Yeah. Okay.
No, it's top class facility.
Yeah.
I mean, and what is interesting about it is that the public embraced it. I mean, at both the Grand Prix meet and at the U.S. Championships, the place was packed, and they do a great job. Fabulous job.
And one other thing, I found, I was one of the first, when I became then at 3 years, another 12 years, I was head of men's track and field. And in that capacity, I started putting women on track and field teams. When I was in ISCC, I started with television, making television. I said to Peter Diamond, here's the deal, Peter. The women are going to have a steeplechase, a pole vault. One by one, I put these events as a final on television, in the television venue, so no one in the world, especially the IAAF, say that women there's no major deal. And you have to tell your announcers they will not use the word exhibition. Gotcha. Period. Right. So all you saw was at the trials, this is the women's triple jump, hammer, pole vault, steeplechase, etc. Those events we had them one by one. They got in because you could no longer say they weren't on world. That's the second greatest meet in the world, for Christ's sakes, And I put women on men's teams, and there was a young lady. Well, I was watching her one day down in this little blonde lady. She's got these 2 kids there, and she's just chewing their ass. These hurdlers. She's about this big, But and I watched. She's a damn good coach. So I asked her if she'd like to go international trip. And she looked at me, probably thought it was a pickup line, of course. And so I go back and I tell the small committee, when I raise my hand, you'll all raise your hand. We're going to put some women on men's teams. And I sent her to China as the head sprint and hurdle coach.
So you got, I mean, your name pops up as one of the more powerful people in our sport. You get things done. You're a mover. You're a shaker.
Powerful, I wouldn't nickname. I told you, I'm a small fish in a little pond.
I mean, from Wapato to the Olympic coach to the United States, the little guy from L.A. who went to that little private Catholic school, and here we are in Spokane. I'd like you to kind of close it off with maybe one of the most memorable moments in your experience as coach at Washington State. And I'm sure you had a lot of them, but is there one that just you want to talk about?
Yeah, and it has nothing to do with winning, nothing to do with great stuff. I had a kid named Jim McGreevy. He's a doctor today, local boy. Mother was a physical therapist, and some of our kids, went with her. She's a Pullman kid, and she asked me, if father's the farmer, and I bought my lambs from him. And mother asked me if he could turn off a track. Now, he's a 13-foot pole vaulter. I said, oh, my God, Sloan's going to lose his marbles. But this is political. Yeah. So I tell Sloan he's got to take this pole vaulter. So McGeevy's there the first year, the second year, the third year. He stays out, he works out. He gets in a few meets, but he doesn't score much. He doesn't score any points to get a letter. Now we go to Everett his senior year. And when you have meet your traditional meet, You can take everybody. Now, it is just a little bit of wet, not much. And I tell McGreevy, he opens at 12 feet, 12, 6, 12, 9, 13 feet, 13, 6, 13, 9, 13, 10, or 11, and he goes out. And they all, the two 17-footers from Washington and our 17-footers, they all know height, and we win the meet because of McGreevy. We're now back on the bus. And Sloan, I said, I'm going to give him his letter. Sloan says, but nobody, he won without any competition. I said, no, Sloan. They were entered. They didn't make it. I said, this is the epitome of why we're in this sport.
Exactly.
McGreevy beat Washington. He gets his damn letter.
I love that. That's a great story. So we're closing it off. I want to thank John from driving up from Pullman, Rick Riley, who was in our last podcast, who was a Cougar and a legend in Spokane. John, you're a legend in Spokane too. I mean, we're glad you got out of California, by the way. And I thank
So am
you. And thank you, audience. And we'll be having another podcast soon. Thank you.
I hope that was okay.
Hey,
It was
great.
Well, you have a zillion stories.
Oh, yeah.